Let's see. Also, over time, how has this program developed and evolved?
Over the years, originally in 1971, Congress did say, yeah, you can adopt them out. But in 1971, you could adopt a horse or a burro, but it remained the property of the U.S. for the rest of its life, or, until you gave it back to us. I'm not real sure how they intended that to work. But then in 1978, they amended the act, the Wild Free Roaming Horse and Burro Act. They amended that to where after a year, we would only, if they took care of it for a year and they sent in a letter that we send out to them called title eligibility letter, said that they had taken good care of the horse, is in good shape and everything like that, then they would receive title to it. Another thing, back in the old days, when they originally passed the act, the BLM wasn't really into managing the horses. They were considered strays. The ranchers did things with them. And when we got the program, we had to take a lot of time to try to figure out where we were going and what we were going to do. And one of the first things we had to do is figure out how many we had. And most states did not get any kind of a population estimate until about 1974. So it's evolved over that. The 1 year eligibility for the title, that was to ensure that we didn't, that people didn't adopt it, get a title to it or immediately and then go send it off to slaughter or do something else with it. Many of our regulations, for instance, if you adopt a burro from us in that first year, you can't rope it. You can't use it as a roping animal. Some people have tried that. You can't do that. You can't take one of these Mustangs here and go turn it into a buck and stock in a rodeo, because certain people consider that to be misuse of the animal. The roping, I can see that. Buck and stock, they only go work 8 seconds, but anyway, a night. And so it's not that, but as things come up, we've been sued many times and won some, lost some, and we just kind of turn it around and try to make lemonade out of it as best we can.
Right. Well, overall, it sounds like the program, has a very noble goals, and you're doing what you can to meet those goals. So I'm just wondering, in addition to adoption, are there other ways that a person can contribute positively to the program?
We get educated on what we're really doing is the biggest thing. There's a lot of flack out there and things, but we've been told we don't care about the animals, and I've been in it 24 years and I care more about the animals. Some of the people that are telling me I don't care. So it's get educated. You can adopt. People want to come around and help us set these pens up for adoptions and stuff like that, boy, you're more than welcome to come out, and we'll put you to work. We'll let you see what we do, how we do it, and things like that. They can get involved. One of the best ways is to call one of the offices, or they can send me an email up at the Arizona State office. Get in and say, we want to be involved in the whole process, which, we have when we're doing an environmental assessment or we're trying to determine whether we have too many animals out there, they can comment on it. They can come in and look at all of the data that we have, because we gather lots of data all the time. And so, they're more than welcome to get involved that way and see what we really do. We're also starting to allow people to come out and watch our gathers. We never really said you can't come do it, but nobody ever really was interested. But now some of the wrong people have decided they want to watch us and watching for us to do something wrong. But what they don't understand is they got to keep in the back of their mind is that these are wild animals, just like a deer, just like a bighorn sheep or an antelope. And this is the smallest thing. When we put them in a trap or when we put them in one of these pens, it's the smallest thing and the most confined they've ever been in their whole life, and bad things happen.
Yeah.
And so, it's just we we do everything within our power to keep from doing it, and the hardest decision we ever got to make is if we got to put one down.
Right. Yeah, that's very true about them being in the smallest space that they've ever been in, and they have to go through that process if people want to have one of their own that they can actually, put to work or ride.
Right. Well, and it's all that, but it's also, and the other thing is if we don't do that, these groups that are giving us hard time, if we just leave them alone out there, eventually they're gonna start starving to death. And that isn't, and Mother Nature's not humane in the way she calls the animals. This is the most humane way for us to maintain a sustainable population on the rangeland.
Right, and if somebody adopts a horse, that horse, won't be fighting for survival, competing with other horses out there and other animals. They'll be getting fed and watered and pampered and all that. So it ultimately works out, I think, pretty nicely.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so it sounds like adoption is kind of a trade-off. The horses, even though they're coming off of their natural habitat, they're coming into something that if they're with the right person, will be very beneficial to them. Do you have any thoughts to expand upon that?
Yeah, recently in the news we had the Calico gather, and we had quite a few, about 80 head of horses that died in the corrals after we gathered them off of the range. What we'd point out is those were in pretty poor shape. They were pregnant mares, and they were unable to make the switch from the native range, which was a bunch of sagebrush and other low quality forage, to the alfalfa hay that we were feeding them. And actually we start them on grass hay when we first bring them in, knowing that they don't have the right bugs in their gut. That process, that's those mares, some of them, I can't say for sure whether it was a lot or most or what, but some of those likely weren't going to make it through the winter anyway. They'd have had trouble foaling, and the foal would have died as well as she did. But once they get home, there's no truer friend than one of these adopted wild horses. You talk to any adopter that has one and has done anything with them. I mean, they're the sweetest horses. It's not like they gave up something. I mean, living life naturally out on the range, the way you said native range, it's really their adopted range there too. True. But because they are not, they disappeared from here about 10,000 years ago. So we don't have saber-toothed tigers anymore. But that's not an easy life living out there on the range for them either. And so they got to fight and scrape just to stay alive. And so you get them into a pen, you get one of these home, and you start working with it, and you start bonding with the horse. And that's the most important thing is the adopter starts bonding with the horse, stand in it. I've seen people that read books in the pen with the horse that and just sit there, and the horse finally gets curious enough, and after that there's no truer friend than that adopted horse. They do great after that, and they'll live up to be 30 years old and still be a good riding horse.
Oh, that's terrific. That's very good news. I'm glad to be able to share that. Well, I think that ought to do it. So we're going to wrap up our discussion here. And again, I'm Beth Frenier from Exist Kind, here with Roger Euler of the BLM. Very glad to get some information about this adoption here in Flagstaff. And thank you very much for taking the time.
Well, thank you.
Very good.
When wild horse and burros numbers are in balance, then starvation and culling is unnecessary. So with the adoption program, what they're attempting to do is remove the excess wild burros and horses, which is all they can do by law. And then that takes the stress off the land, so that the remaining wild animals live a better life and do not starve to death, which is a very a negative consequence. So by taking the animals and having them find a nice home is a much better fate than to die of thirst and starvation. So the animals that are captured get a better home, and the animals that are left behind get to live a better standard of living that may not be perfect, but I feel is headed in the right direction. And if you have the resources, be sure and come down here, and if you need an animal and you have the resources for an animal, and can provide it a good life, be sure and come down here and adopt one of these wonderful creatures. Now in this adoption program, they have events like these at various places throughout the United States throughout the year. And you can check it out. All you got to do is go to blm.gov, and then from there, look for the link about the Wild Horse and Burro Adoption Program, and you'll find through those links the dates and times of where this is taking place. So be sure when one comes near you to check it out. It's a good thing.